Hi, I'm Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot, and today we are here with Jessica Schab. Is that how you say your name?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And Jessica is a crystal child, is what she calls herself. Mm-hmm. And we're really excited to be able to talk to her today. So Jessica, tell me a little bit about yourself and kind of a little bit about your journey. And she's had a very interesting time growing up. And at this time you're about almost 26, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay, so why don't you tell me, like the early childhood kind of thing with the relationship with your father and how you sort of tapped into all of this.
All right. I was very, very shy growing up. I actually didn't fit in, surprisingly. I didn't really have friends, but my age, I actually did have a lot of grannies, which I adopted. I had 50, and they taught me how to knit and crochet and things like that. I retreated a lot into cartoons, and it really came about when I was 16. That was the big trigger, if you will. Before that, though, I do remember saying things in school like angels are aliens and aliens are angels, but
so you would say this in school?
Yes.
And what would be the reaction to the children around you?
Oh, laughter, ridicule, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And why would you say that?
You know what? I really didn't know.
Okay.
It was almost like channeling, but I wasn't aware I was channeling.
Okay.
I just started sharing this information, and it wasn't even before I even knew what was going on with my father. So just thinking back to it, that's kind of interesting and different.
Okay, so what happened then? I mean, obviously this is what you did on the early days. How did you progress at that point? Because I know there's a part in which you actually kind of tried to reject that world. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, yeah, because when you first get into this information, it brings about an existential breakdown. You let go of everything you think you know about yourself and the world and everybody. So it is, in a sense, a little bit of a death. And also a rebirth. You're an empty cup now, an empty vessel to be filled.
Be a little more specific in terms of your experience, because I know that you had a tragedy in your life, but prior to that, because that happened kind of like in your late teens,
yes,
you had sort of a dilemma. So can you describe what your father was like and why and how that dilemma kind of came around in your life?
He was very distant. He was connected to a world that I wasn't familiar with at the time, and he spoke about things that I really didn't understand also. But he was, very, very passionate and loving as well. But sorry, I'm getting a little nervous. Well, I can say beforehand, I was always a little bit suspicious in school. I felt like I didn't like being taught what to think rather than how to think. That was always in the back of my mind. And also just, I kind of felt like I was coming off the assembly line. And I remember trying to ask about things that I would notice that there was just stuff we weren't being taught about in school. For example, in grade 8, they were saying the only kind of matter is gas, solid, and liquid. And I raised my hand and I said, well, what about plasma? And you know what she said? Go to detention.
Go to detention, really?
Yeah. So,
very interesting.
Yeah.
And you grew up in what area?
Well, I was born in Winnipeg, but I left when I was 7. Mm-hmm. And the Vancouver area, the suburbs.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you were told to go to detention because you talked about plasma.
Yes.
And that, actually, so they actually didn't have any clue about that. And we're talking what year approximately? Do you remember?
I was in grade 8, yes.
Okay.
First year of high school.
Okay.
And I just started to realize, wait a second here, there's a lot they're not saying, and why can't we talk about it? Why do we get in trouble if we bring this stuff up?
Okay.
Right?
So what happened after that?
I kind of disregarded it. Like, I didn't really pay too much attention to it. It was just always in the back of the brain. And it's almost like a detective. You're collecting all these bits and pieces as you go on the way, and still very blind. So we have a trigger. And my trigger was when I was 16. It was tragedy. My sister ended up passing away. And her friend was drinking and driving, and it was just my sister that went, so it was just her time. And
okay, and how did that affect you? Obviously, it's distressing, and we don't have to dwell on it here, but at the same time, I think that it has something to do with your willingness to perhaps let in these other worlds. Would you say that?
Yes, because I realized that I was very depressed at that time, and I was also very Christian thinking, in the sense that I felt that everybody who parties and does drugs and things like that is bad, and I don't want to converse with them. I'm not saying all Christians think like that, but that was just the way my headspace was and my interpretation of that. So when she passed away, and I was listening to her friends speak about her at the funeral, they were talking about this wonderful girl that I never got to know because I shut her out, because I was very judgmental. So right then and there, I just vowed to myself that I was never going to judge people by what they did. That wasn't who they really were. It's just experiences that we come here for. It was a very devastating time when my sister passed away, in that it destroyed the family. My mother ended up getting worse, very bad migraines. She had migraines before, but they seemed to be more frequent and lasted longer and more severe. And my father ended up getting a stroke. And family broke apart. My brother went to university. My other brother went to a foster home. We became homeless. So it was a lot all at once. And I think I just became very traumatized. It almost didn't seem real.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You told me that your father had a big influence on your sort of letting ETs communicate with you. Can you talk to me about that story?
Yes. Right after my sister passed away, my dad said, she's come back, and she started to speak to him. And she said that it's a very exciting time to be alive. The universe is like a big garden. There's lots of tending to. I've come back to let you know that certain members of the family have been called for a very specific mission. And she was like the introduction towards a whole bunch of other beings coming through. So after my sister started coming through, the catalyst, then came angels, nature spirits, ascended masters, extraterrestrials. It just got really, really out there.
Okay, when you say this happened, did this happen to you, or did this happen to your father?
This happened to my father.
Okay.
It all happened to my father first.
So he was very open talking to you about this.
Well, he was really shocked and taken aback. It was exciting, and he just had to share with the family, because he didn't really, I don't know if he knew what to make of it at that time, but he knew that he needed to share this because it was a big thing to my sister. The interesting thing about that, how that she came back, was mediums can only speak to people who passed away if they haven't crossed over. Mm-hmm. She had crossed over, and then she came right back.
Okay, when you say she came right back, what do you mean by that? Do you mean she was reincarnated in another body and coming to you from there, or do you mean that she was in another dimension?
She was in another dimension.
Okay.
Yes, the fifth, and my dad described her as very, very bright white light being appeared to him, like an angel, and he said it was very much her personality, because she's like, "Look, Dad, don't I look pretty?" Like a girl would say. So, yeah, something you got to share. It's something really amazing happened.
Okay, and what was your reaction when your father talked about this?
I was very hurt, very upset, because she's passed away. It's